Okay, well, it should be recording now. Yes, there we go. Thank you guys for coming to the March UTRU monthly board meeting. We'll go ahead and get started. First item on the agenda is just our minutes. Let me just get that up really quick. Everybody should see that on their screen now. Did anybody have any, or Bree, this is you. You put these together, so anybody have any thoughts, ideas, suggestions? Things we wish to add?
Rather ambivalent to everything this morning. So.
Yeah. I'm Mark. I did see the assignment of board duties that I guess because I wasn't at that part of the meeting, that I wasn't mentioned, which is fine.
We should probably throw that in there, shouldn't we?
So that would be my only edit.
Anything else we wish to add?
It's in on my end.
All right, well then I'll look for a motion to approve.
Motion.
There's a second. 3 seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chris, I assume you're an aye. There we go.
Aye.
All right, sounds good. Let me just make that change. All right, so moving on to the next item on the agenda is just my update. It was a very admin heavy month for me this past month. So I worked 18.5 hours. Two of the bigger things that really took up my time were publishing the free fair poll and then following up on that. We had great success. I think we had like 100 or something responses. I probably should have pulled that for you, but we had a really good response to that. And so I will start to put that together as far as the actual poll results are concerned and get that pushed out. Also, the big thing that we had is continuing to work on the South Salt Lake Sugar House chapter. I brought this up last month as part of something that we were working on. We have since moved forward. From there, we have pushed out through all of our current membership, those who might be interested in participating, as well as just also making sure that we are publishing it on Facebook and doing those sorts of things. And so I started pushing that out as well. So between that, we've had 7 individuals say that they want to at least show some interest in there. We don't have a president, vice president. Well, we have a president, but we don't have a vice president or a treasurer yet. So we can't fully bond them together and make them an official group, even though we've kind of put them on the Facebook page and done all of that sort of stuff. So we're still working on that. It will happen. We just need to get a couple people to commit. And so I part of my monthly duty is I'm following up with the chapters, seeing where they're at. I've been working more closely with that one in particular, just to, see where we are at, see where we can get it going to. But it is moving along. And I'm pretty sure hopefully by this time next month, knock on wood, I will officially be able to put them together. Other things I worked on, prepare for the quarterly membership meeting, and then creating our monthly newsletter and getting that out, just as part of our email. On the fundraising side of things, so Chris sent over at APTA, I have it still up, the American Public Transportation Association. He sent me over some information on a grant, up to $10,000. This one I feel is promising. It is specifically focused on transit advocacy and finding ways to fund transit advocacy. So yeah, between $5,000 and $10,000, I'm going to go for 10. We'll see what happens. And I am just I've been modifying our main CAT proposal just to better fit their specific questions. But I'm optimistic about this one. So we'll see where we are on that one. Also continue to work on Transit Imagine. That kind of took a secondary note to the grants and the membership meetings, the newsletter, and all that sort of stuff. It's one of those things that I just continually plug away at. And so, if people want to assist in certain sections, that's always great. But if not, I'm again just going to keep plugging away at that one more than anything else. And then by the numbers, had 45 new Twitter followers because somehow miraculously Twitter still manages to stay alive. So we are now at 675.
They're just bots.
I know. They seem to interact with me as though they are human beings. Though.
We got pretty good bots now.
Yeah, I know.
I might be a bot right now.
Oh God. Well, then there you go. 4 new TikTok followers are up to 12. 2 new YouTube followers are up to 7. 29 new members. A lot of those came from the survey. 29 new members. We're at 194 now, officially. So, Chris, I'm just curious, like where, before we lost the list, where were we? Do you remember?
I was just going to say 192 is close to, I think, the 194 we had.
Okay. Well, so then if that's the case, we're
at least we had over 1,000 contacts though between Facebook and Facebook interaction, because that's when Nation Builder would track your anytime a person would click a like or comment on the Facebook post, it would automatically go into Nation Builder.
So, oh, interesting. Well,
yeah, but that's all garbage under the street now.
It is what it is. So it sounds like, at least as far as signed up members, people who consider themselves a member, we're at least back to where we were. And it took about a year to get there. At least when I've been on now for about a year. So now we just continue to continue to grow and continue to do what we need to do. But yeah, I was thinking it was right around the 200 mark when we lost everything. So,
yeah, I want to say it's 194. I think that was the most.
Well, then that's exactly where we're at now. So there you go. Also, Chris, I want your Amtrak mug.
They do not sell these in the store anymore.
You stole it from a train?
No, they sold these in the Amtrak store for years, and then all of a sudden they stopped. You can't get them in the Amtrak store. So I bought this. I bought this after I did my 30-day trek around the U.S. in a train.
Nice.
This was my consolation prize.
To be honest, to have a mug. And then finally, 16 new people on the mailing list not wishing to be listed as members. So that's 36 we're at now. So yeah, I mean, overall, that was, like I said, probably the biggest things that kind of took up my time were the building of the chapter and then following up and doing the stuff related to the free fare poll. Surprise, surprise, I haven't dug into the data, but real initial, at least of the people that took the poll, it's not free fare that people want. And it's not as if we didn't already know that, but it really is. Overall, people were leaning more towards frequency. I have to dive into the data a little bit more. I know the questions were a little complicated, but I was purposely trying to set up you really need to think about what you're choosing. And I know a lot of people kind of didn't like that. They wanted just like a 1-question poll.
I want it quick. I want it now.
And like
Twitter, I saw feedback. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, I know I took some heat for that, but I'm like, no, I want to have something real and presentable if you really had to choose between this thing and this thing. And so I modified it a little bit from right when I hit release, but for the most part, it was, yeah, I want you to make hard decisions that you don't like, that are, require thought. So
that's why I made the comment about slapping you with a fish. Slap Curtis with a fish, but do it. Take the survey. Yeah. It's a very worthwhile survey. So
yeah, there was a logic behind it. There was a logic. So 93 people took that. I just want to get that pulled up. So I will get the formal data put together. And then as far as outstanding items, I know last meeting I said I would pull donor information as far as political donors were concerned. Obviously, I haven't done that yet. I need to make that a priority. Things just popped up. My priority for now is getting that APTA grant sent off. That's due on the 24th. I'm about 3/4 of the way there. I'm suspecting I'll get that sent off before the end of the week. But yeah, so that is my update. Are there any questions?
I just have one comment. I went to this, it was a UTA workshop that they did. It wasn't UDOT or UTA that did it. It was some person from Michigan, but it was at the public library, and they were doing a workshop on how to be more effective in UTA's public engagement. So it showed the survey that they did for the August 1st change day. And then everybody just kind of, listed their suggestions and what they thought that, would be better for the survey. And it was funny because one person in there brought up the free fare survey. And there were a couple of representatives from UTA there, but they were so confused. They're like, we didn't put out a survey. And
good.
Anyways.
That is a very good, that's a good thing. That's very good.
Yeah, it is good. I will say they did not have very many great things to say about the survey as pertains to like how a survey is crafted, but they did, they thought, it was good to have public feedback. And so it was interesting that, UTA didn't do a survey after that All-Star weekend, truthfully, but anyways, I just wanted to share that.
That's good to know. And I've been in politics long enough to know that everybody's a critic. And like I said, I know that it was a complicated survey question, but I think I purposely crafted it that way.
God, anything with more than 3 survey questions. Oh, this is so long.
I know. So but I'm glad to hear. Thank you for that feedback as far as that's concerned, that at least it kind of got out into the world a little bit. And it was honestly, I think what happened is because we're always balancing those 3 things, right? Free fare versus coverage versus frequency. And so because there's basically a matrix of 9 points at that point, you get a lot of complicated, what do you actually want to choose? So anyway, long story short, I will start to be also putting that information together, getting that out as far as what the findings were, and kind of move forward from there. So cool. I'm glad to hear that it went out. And I think you're referring to the grad student that was kind of putting on an event down there. I know we advertised it on ours. She talked to us in the past just to kind of see where we were at. Obviously, she kind of moved forward and went with UTA directly instead of us, which is not a problem. I wasn't surprised. She was kind of just gathering information when I talked to her back in like May of last year. But anyway, so there's all that. Any other questions as far as my update is concerned?
With the grant that you're submitting, if you need a letter of support or collaboration or something from University of Utah, and from my lab, I can put that in there. Not sure if that's going to, if that would be useful, but considering that we've gotten some grants together we've gotten a grant together in the past.
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
One of the problems on this grant, just so you know, we did apply for it in 2019, and it was probably a pretty good program. They turned it down. So you might want to contact somebody directly there and say, hey,
right,
what really do we need? Because I thought the grant application was perfect. It was a perfect advocacy plan that we came up with. So just FYI, the first one we applied for was turned down. They didn't
go for it.
They didn't even say it sucked. They just said no.
Yeah. They asked for a meeting, Curtis. That's like grants, grantsmanship. Due diligence.
I want to at least get it put together before I reach out and just say, hey, look at this. Like I said, I should have it done pretty soon. It's due on the 24th. That's a good point. I'll request the meeting tomorrow, just to get it on the books. And then as far as letters of recommendation or letters of support, I should say, they specifically want one from UTA. Already got that one. But any other ones that we can get in, the more the merrier. So
I'll check people on my side to make sure I'm allowed to do something like that, but I'd be happy to as well.
Sounds good.
That's turnaround too. March 24th, April
March
award.
24th.
And then invoice them September 1st. So yeah, pretty quick. Nice.
Yep. So, any other questions? Any other thoughts? Okay. Well, then let's move on. The next item on the agenda, that would be fundraising discussion. So, John, I know you sent out a couple articles, just kind of point by point or strategies, top 10s, 3 things that we need to be doing. So I'll hand the floor over to you to at least start things off, and then we can kind of have a conversation from there.
Sure. And this, we should all feel, and I feel, always somewhat uncomfortable when it comes to the topic of money and the topic of fundraising. But it's something that I think as board members, I thought about this since being appointed president, or elected rather, and some of the responsibilities of how we're going to grow this organization. And as I was reading the Better Buses, Better Cities book, one of the things that I found really striking was that some grants, philanthropic organizations out there will do things like spend $900,000 a year supporting certain bus lanes and $500,000 a year supporting, the transit in their communities. And the point was made in the book that if that money was spent on organizing, it would go a lot further because it would change the equation. And so, and I thought, we don't need that many people. We don't need that much in terms of funds in the grand scheme of things in order to be a really effective organization. But we do need people like Curtis to actually, get paid and not be, donating his time. And start to think about growing the organization. And what does this organization look like in 12 to 24 months or in 5 years? I look at stuff like transportation alternatives. I look at groups that are in New York and Boston, DC, and other cities, and even out west. And the ones that have been successful in getting transit victories, they've had staff. They've had a few people working there. They've had an executive director. They've had organizers. They've had people that are dedicated to data, or they've had people dedicated to fundraising, et cetera. And so, there's a lot we can do as individuals, but I think as board members, we need to think about having a strategy, having some goals, and coming up with how we're each going to play a role in getting this forward and getting things moved forward in terms of getting the organization on a sustainable track financially. And so those articles that I sent out, there's kind of 3 things about, in one of them, and the first one is kind of like talking about 3 roles: ambassadors, advocates, and askers. And so we all think about fundraising, think about, how am I going to ask somebody for a donation for $5,000, $10,000, $50,000, what have you? And I don't think we can take the pressure off ourselves and say, like, there's actually different roles you can play in facilitating getting to that point in the conversation. And so being, an advocate or an ambassador, where you just start talking up the board, you start talking up the organization and our goals, and then kind of start to cultivate some relationships. And those are roles that we all feel much more comfortable playing. And then the people asking, and maybe myself or Chris or Curtis, get introduced to the people that you think would want to be asked, and then we do the asking, so we take the kind of burden off of you. But I think we should all be thinking about that. And then thinking about, what do we have? Do we have so to kind of bring this back around, one question I have for Chris and Curtis is, do we have a financial strategy plan in terms of growing the organization? Have we ever written anything up like that in the past? And is that something I think we should do, but I wanted to get everybody's impression, thoughts about whether we should do it or not.
I guess I'll go first. Obviously I'm not a board member, but I am always a fan that if it is written down, you're more likely to hold yourself accountable, more likely to hit targets or find out why you didn't hit targets. And so from an organizational standpoint, I'm fully in support of that.
And Chris, is that something that UTRU has done in the past? Have we had any financial plan kind of put on paper in terms of growing the organization? Or?
Well, yeah. So I mean, the major focus that we tried to do, right? So was to basically just get members. So the idea was we get members, we grow members, they pay their dues, and that was our primary focus, was just membership. The idea behind money didn't come into play. And again, this was one of the big problems we had just in general, was that we always talked about an executive director, but it was like, well, but we'll do it part-time. Well, and again, I could spend an hour talking about this, but basically the idea was, well, okay, we get an executive director, and that will basically help us with a better, with a financial plan as far as what we need. And the bigger the bigger thing was, well, and my thought has always been that we should have a full-time executive director, because there are so many transit issues that we can work on individually and as different chapters. So I mean, again, in my view, it was always herding cats. It's like the Democratic Party in Utah, right? Herding cats, right?
Mhm.
It's like, hey, come here, and Fluffy's off, rolling in the sand, or playing with a ball of yarn or whatever. But to me, that is really what transit advocacy is really about, is this idea of there's so many different things that each individual could be working on. So that was basically the plan, was to get the membership up. And then my big deal is I was always working on trying to get board members, right? So as far as an actual plan, no, there was not an actual plan, because we never got to the point where where we could count on somebody being there all the time. So when we collapsed at the beginning of COVID, my plan basically was, find an executive director, check, got him. Offload a lot of the stuff that I've been doing myself, check. And so now, find an unwilling victim. I mean, a upstanding individual to be president, and check. So now that my evil plan is all into place, now the idea is, okay, now we need to start actually getting to the point where that full-time executive director will be paid for. So no real plan other than where we're at right now. So we're really at the beginning of getting the money. And so, I mean, and again, I mean, and I'll probably be pumping some more money into gave me a good tax deduction last year. So, love the taxes. I don't like taxes. Get rid of taxes.
Taxation theft, as they say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not a conservative, like cut taxes at the behest of cutting off your arms and your neck and your head for the entire. But so I'll be throwing some more money in. But again, the money that I have to be able to give is not enough to put Curtis or a like individual full time. I mean, Curtis, I would love to say, hey, Curtis, now you are full time, and you can quit that. What is it? How many hours are you working at your job? You're in a really
40,
but I mean, how
40,
many?
40.
But you're like 1 in the afternoon or something like that till 9 at
Oh
night.
no, it's like it's changed, but it's the
Okay,
later shift. Yeah,
you're late.
technically,
You're later though.
technically I start in 3 minutes, but I can push it off a little bit. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
See,
it's an evening shift, but yes.
So see, we'd like to get you here full time, and the only way we can do
Right.
that is by getting tons of members, or by tapping into these grants, or by getting the rich folk.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I have an article that I'm writing in Salt magazine, which goes to the avenues and the greater Avs and the Federal Heights or the university area. That goes to some of the bougie folks in town, and we're talking about UTRU specifically. and talking about some potential plans and things we've been working on, and how they could contribute, and asking people to contribute or get in touch with us. So I think that, okay. So Chris, it sounds like we're at the perfect point then to think about, putting a financial plan to paper to say these are our goals, and then think about each individual board member saying, like, all right, how can I contribute to this? Not necessarily out of my own pocketbook, but out of, or out of my own checks, but out of my network, and out of people I know and who I feel comfortable talking to, and just talking up transit and thinking strategically about that. There's a few local. One of the things that I've seen in my reading that I've done is that the local foundations are kind of your biggest allies in terms of transit funding. They tend to be the biggest pieces of the puzzle. And so things like the Eccles Foundation or some of the other foundations in town, I think that could be something that we could work into a financial plan or financial strategy, and if people have contacts at those places or are willing to reach out to them. And then there's going to be ones that are more specific to areas that people live in. Some of us live in Salt Lake, some of us live elsewhere. There could be other ones there. Where are we with the UTA? Was the UTA going to provide some funding? What happened with that? Or
it's not that they're not, they just don't want to be the only one providing funding because they don't want to look like they're just using us to lobby, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so we have them as a matching donor then, basically.
We could call them that. I don't know if it'd be matching, but I'm sure they'd be willing once we get some more donors, once we get donors under our belt. I think they'd be more receptive.
Yeah, and so here's the bigger problem that has to happen in order for the I'll point back to politics, and one of the reasons why the Utah Democratic Party, why the donor list and why people don't donate to the Democratic Party in Utah is because if I ask you, well, so what's your plan? What's your plan as the Democratic Party? And they're like, well, we're going to get Democrats elected. Well, that's fine, but it's a very broad, but people don't want to donate to a group if it's just, get Democrats elected. What does it mean for me? Well, so in that same vein, we have the similar problem where it's like, well, what is it we're doing? Well, what's our ultimate plan?
Right.
And so this is where this idea of the Transit Imagine comes in, or we want, buses, trains. So one thing I think we have to do, John, before we get to the nuts and bolts of it, is that we have the guiding principles, we have all of that. Those documents are good. They're even years later, they're still good documents, but we need to come up with a hook. We need the elevator speech. We need this is what we want, so if it's, more buses, more trains everywhere, if that's going to be the slogan, then so that we can stand up at any meeting and say, well, we want more buses, more trains everywhere. And I think one of the things that we talked about was everywhere all the time. And so if the hook is that more buses, more trains everywhere all the time, write that down. That sounds good, Curtis.
Everywhere all the time. You got it.
Yep, more buses, more trains everywhere all the time. And if that's going to be our motto, and to me it sounds like a good motto to talk about, because then people say, "Oh, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that in Harriman?" And then we start talking, and yeah, in Harriman, if people are going to get on the bus, that's where we want it. Right. But we don't have any fixed line buses in Harriman anymore. So, people are all bummed out about transit. So I think the bigger thing not that it's a bad idea that we have to have that plan, but I think we need to stick with a generic overall, this is what we're doing to hook people in, so that they want to sign up for the newsletter, and because one of the problems that we had as a group, and I think and I forget her name, I know her name's Claudia something, but she was a real pain in the ass. She would come into our meetings and she would say, well, what are you doing? And I'd go, well, this is what we're trying to do, but nobody seems to be interested in it. And it's not that she was a pain in the ass in the bad way. It's just that she kept asking that question. Well, what are you doing? And I'd go, I don't know. What are we doing? What are we doing? Anybody know what we're actually doing? Because all we were doing is just, you know, talking about getting membership and things and stuff, and that was it. So at any rate, not to digress, but you're right, we do need a plan, but we have to know what it is that we actually stand for as a group. And I think that idea of, I mean, I just said it, more buses, more trains everywhere all the time. And whether we actually get there, you know, whether a wet blanket stands up and says, well, we don't have enough money to do that. And it's like, well, fine, let's get more money. Let's raise, let's hack the education off the income tax and then allocate, you know, $200 million a year for transit, right? It's all there. We could do it if the wet blankets at the state legislature would just, you know, realize how important transit is to everybody. So anyway, I need to get more coffee or I'm going to keep going on forever. So
yeah, and yeah, Randy, I also agree. I like that Mike is reporting in from that's nice. You on a bus or where are you at, Mike?
I'm on Route 1 right now.
The one, yes. I know.
I'm trying to sleuth it out. I'm trying to sleuth it out based off of what's out your window right now, and I can't quite figure it out.
Looks like downtown-ish.
Probably.
I like it. Walking the walk.
Bus on the bus, so to speak, right?
Bus on the bus.
So, Chris, I think that's a great set of points. A couple of things that I've noticed from my research into transit over the last year or so. One is that the successful organizations tend to be focused on certain projects, and they tend to be either geographically focused or kind of topic focused. And two, if we get two kind of pie in the sky is not the right word, but two kind of like, even I was thinking about this with Transit Imagined, two big picture. I think there's a piece of the big picture that's important, but if the focus is all there, then it doesn't seem like tangible to people in a certain way. So there's like an important vision that I think the big picture is great for, Transit Imagine is great for, and that's like the long-term vision. And then, but people are like, what are you doing now? And so we do have something going on now, which is that we've got a budding van pool program starting, right? So I just applied for another $35,000 at the U to support vans, to support surveys for the vans. And we have a collaboration with Psych and Educational Psych, and a budding collaboration with the Natural History Museum of Utah. I used to work at another natural history museum, but I can't quite get that acronym right. It's not ordered in the same way. But the NMHU has a climate change exhibit that they're doing, and that we're going to incorporate that into the trial. So talking to people about van pools and about, would you want to participate? We could expand that as a project and say, hey, this is an underutilized resource at the UTA. This is a way to get people on shared transit, and is something that you can talk to, board members can talk to with their friends in their workplaces who regularly commute to the same place, especially bigger organizations. And that can be something where it's a nice project for us. Another one is I would love us to look into, or somebody from the board, maybe this could be an assignment sent out to a board member, is I want to get a better understanding of livable streets. It sounds like livable streets is something that is, this came out of, I think, Boston, but it's spread around other transit organizations throughout the country. And it seems to be kind of a bridge between the outreach that transit organizations do, that transit agencies do, and that transit advocates do. And that it's the advocates coming in to fill a critical gap in the communication with the public and in the outreach. And so they do stuff like have volunteers at bus stops in shifts doing surveys of the riders and gathering a bunch of information that is in conjunction with their transit agency, but also is a lot of fodder for their own self and serves the purpose of being a presence as an organization, and serves the purpose of giving volunteers something to do, and serves the purpose of project that could be fundable, because funders, like you said, Chris, they're looking for something tangible. What are you doing? They don't want to put money towards operating funds necessarily, just like the federal government doesn't want to put money towards operating funds. Thank you, Reagan. You know, it's they always want to see like, oh, where's my dollar going to go to? And so I think that you know, that could be something that we look at as well. Does anybody on the board want to take a look into livable streets a little bit more and have a report back to us for the next board meeting? Devin?
I don't know if I don't think I'm a board member, but I'm on the just here, and I think I've been following livable streets quite closely.
Be careful for what you wish for.
Particularly, you know, I've been trying to reach out to UDOT because that seems to be, you know, the biggest enemy of anything we want. So basically getting them on board. They're kind of already trying to put together that statewide trail network, but as far as getting support for transit on their precious roads like State Street, you know, Redwood Road, things that are really just like pedestrian cyclist nightmares. The ability to move much more people on those roads much more safely. I think that, and especially Salt Lake City right now, they are looking heavily into Vision Zero. It's an initiative, you know, zero fatalities. It's kind of spread throughout the country, but particularly in Salt Lake, as we've had a huge uptick of pedestrian deaths this year. So I think leveraging that with, you know, transit funding would be beneficial for our cause for sure.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree. I think there's, yeah, Salt Lake City signed on to that, right? They finally did.
They did, yeah.
So that's very tangible, and there's a role there for us, I would say, for sure, for UTRU to play there. And that could be a nice kind of prize. Like, what can we do how can we think about how we strategically play a role in moving forward Vision Zero? And are there any other cities in the county, or at least along the Wasatch Front, signed up to Vision Zero, or is it just Salt Lake City right now?
Not that I'm aware of.
I think it's just Salt Lake City right now. However, I don't know actually where I was going. Never mind.
So this could be something else that people from outside of Salt Lake ask their, you know, to see if other cities can get signed up. That could be a chapter thing to do as well. But I think that's a great idea. Other thoughts. So project-wise, there's Transit Imagined. That's our overall vision. That's our long-term, like, where do things look? And I think from the board meeting not the board meeting, the member meeting where we had people from the UTA and we chatted with them afterward, it sounds like their 2030 plan is going to drop sometime in the fall or winter of this year. And so that may be you know, we can think about our Transit Imagine aligning something around when the UTA does that, and some feedback there and some strategic thinking about that. That's one piece. I think the Vision Zero thing is perfect because there's all these resources available with the Vision Zero network. Salt Lake City's new to this, so it's not like something that's been going on a long time. And there's a transit advocacy piece because I know Sweet Streets, and I think Bike Utah, and a few other biking. There's going to be people pushing on the Sweet Streets would be a great partner, Mike. I think that's a great idea. There's going to be people pushing on the biking part of that. I don't know if there's going to be anybody at the table for the transit part of that. And so I think we can be at the table for the transit part of that and be like, this is where transit plays a role in Vision Zero. And then somebody, was it you, Devin, who talked about, we say, you know, a little bit about livable streets, or?
What was that?
Livable streets, did you say you know something about that, or?
I thought they were mostly related. That was like Sweet Street's whole deal is livable streets. So yeah, I think partnering with them because their main thing is just more bike lanes all over the city. But I think you can't take away capacity by adding bike lanes adding capacity by taking away lanes and for transit. You know what I mean?
Right. One of the things that we need to focus on too, John, and this is where a problem comes in, and it's one of the reasons why. So Alex went to Sweet Streets because Sweet Streets is focused on Salt Lake City, and the population inside Salt Lake City is only like what, a tenth of the entire service district.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we have to look at is the fact that the poor schmuck in Sandy doesn't have, well, and Harriman for that matter, they don't have the transit options. If when you mentioned bike lane, that it's not even on the radar in Sandy or in any of these other cities. Where outside of Salt Lake City, what city has the most bike lanes? Maybe Provo down along the river. I don't know, but so again, the one thing that we can't lose focus on is that we're talking system wide, and while we can get a lot of people on board in Salt Lake City, the people outside of the city or in different transit deserts, need to get involved. So that's one thing that, and I'm passionate about that, because one of the problems that we've had always in the past is that all of our board members were located inside Salt Lake City. That's where they lived. Right. And so this idea of moving into Provo or Ogden and getting people involved there. So yeah, so that's my thought on this, and not to be a wet blanket, but we have to figure that part out if we're going to be successful, because one of the things that I'm afraid of is that, well, okay, if we're all talking about transit in Salt Lake City, then there's not going to be a lot of money. The money's going to go to all these other organizations instead of us. So that's something that we have to put into the mix as well. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I think we have two things cooking in terms of projects right now, or three really, right? That we can say are things we're working on. One is Transit Imagined, big picture. One is Van Pools, and Van Pools is funded, that's something that can expand and involve people that's going to involve people that are outside of Salt Lake City. I've been told by the U not to recruit from within Salt Lake City unless it's the west side, which is important, but definitely not the northeast quadrant of the city, which has too good transit access to the U. And then the other piece that we could have here is piggybacking on Vision Zero and expanding that out. And then a strategic goal for all of us to think about is reaching out to people that live outside of Salt Lake City and getting some people involved outside of Salt Lake City. But so we've got Transit Imagine, that's big picture. Van Pools, and then do we like this idea of digging more into Vision Zero as kind of a project for the organization, or do we want to think about other things that could slot into that? What are people's thoughts?
I think getting UDOT on board with Vision Zero, and I know their main thing is zero fatalities, but getting them to adopt, a vision to develop safer roads than they currently do would be huge for, especially like you mentioned, the people in Sandy and, Murray, Midvale, people that don't have, or Draper even, great transit access. So
that's an awfully big bite. That's almost like getting the devil. That's almost like getting the devil to show up to sacrament meeting on Sunday. It's a pretty lofty goal, but chip away at it. In my estimation, UDOT is almost the devil when it comes to they're just totally incompatible with any actual transit needs. So
is it a worthwhile strategy to think about getting more cities to sign up for Vision Zero? And then, one thing is, where is transit advocacy in Vision Zero? That's like one piece of the puzzle. You know, where does that fit in, and what can a transit advocacy organization bring to the table for a Vision Zero thing? You know, for the Vision Zero plans and networks.
Well, first of all, transit's just much safer, so you'll have less deaths if people are taking transit than driving. So that's the biggest thing. That's my opinion, anyways.
So I mean, so the idea of getting cities on board. I mean, I would think. Yeah. So I mean, we could talk to cities about getting on board Vision, but it might be a better use of our time if we just talk to cities in general about transit, and maybe that is kind of an in or a push to get people that are outside of Salt Lake City on board with transit. So in other words, and this is an idea that we've had for years, but we've just never been able to come up with a good executable plan, right? So what we should be doing is everybody should be showing up at all of the different city council meetings across the Wasatch board, and there's a whole grundle of cities, right? There's got to be like 50 or 60 cities within the transit district that you really should be showing up to and be saying, you know, look, Harriman, you know, you had this really great transit line that went down 126 South and into your city, but because nobody was using it, now you got these little micro buses that are effectively cheap Ubers that the service is somewhat lacking. So I don't know, maybe maybe we tie that into it. So I think that's a good idea, but I'm just not sure how it would work. You know, that program versus getting other cities into it, and more importantly, what does that transit piece look like between UTRU and Vision Zero? What does that look like?
I know it took a lot of work to get Salt Lake City on board with Vision Zero, and even if they had been in the past dipping their toes in around safe streets work pre-COVID and some of the stuff where I think Mendenhall had done, you know, shutting down certain streets in the summer to make it pedestrian only, those kind of things. I like the idea of Vision Zero, you know, as a physician, of course, you know, and the public health practitioner, it appeals to me. But I also, my issue there is I want us to be think about, let's take this for homework for the month. Tangible. I want something tangible that chapters can work on, volunteers can do. It's like a tangible project for people to get involved in. That's what I like about livable streets, is that there's something tangible there. Pop-up bus lanes can also be fundraised against. If people are familiar with that, I wrote about that in my SALT article. And so that's the idea, that you get a city or a town to say, all right, we're going to dedicate a bus lane during rush hour, morning and evening, and we're going to just paint it, put some cones down, make boarding easier, and do some signal priority, and increase the frequency as a trial. And instead of doing like a 6-year outreach process over BRT and pray that the feds bring in money and spend $100 million, you know, like Ogden or something, you have this process that just takes a few months, and all of a sudden you have a bus lane in there, and then you trial it out for a few weeks, and then you get the feedback from the community. And that becomes, you're getting feedback from people who actually used it. And when they've done it in Everett, they've done it in Massachusetts, they've done it around the country now, people liked it, riders liked it, drivers liked it, riders liked it, cyclists liked it, and all for different reasons. And that's kind of like a potential project as well. You know, but something I'm trying to think of things that are like let's advocate for a city to adopt a certain policy that then gets put on the planner's lap, who are, you know, the same planning department that shows up to our meetings, and now they've got something else to, you know, another document to produce, and more smaller things that push the needle and get people excited. So let's think about, maybe that's a homework item for next meeting. Just think about some of these smaller tangible projects. The van pool is a tangible project like this, right? Because you can recruit people for van pools, and then we can take from the U we are designing surveys that can be given, and we can enroll people outside of the University of Utah in our kind of transit and climate education platform that would be all online, and get them to organize their own van pools, and then do the surveys pre and post after they get the education while they're participating in a van pool about their stress and about their position on transit and on their position on climate change. And so that's kind of a project that's tangible, gets people involved, and it's something for us to work on. And we can bring it to funders and say, hey, we want to expand this, and we want to see there to be 500, 1,000 of these vans flying around for each of the companies around. And so, yeah. So in terms of strategy, Chris, to bring this all back to where we were, so there's projects that we need to say that we can bring to funders, and then there's a strategy of how we're going to get funders in and how we're going to do fundraising. And so I think at this point, and then let's think about two things in terms of board member homework for the next meeting, and for Devin, if you like joining us at these meetings as well, is what are the projects that we're going to prioritize, and can we come up with ideas for small, tangible projects that are along the lines of livable streets, or along the lines of, livable streets, or along the lines of better bus stops, kind of thing, for our chapters to do. And I think we should also be in touch with our chapters around that. And then two, think about who are the contacts you have. Maybe bring a few contacts at either local foundations or local places where fundraising could get done, to bring to the table for next month. Sound like reasonable asks, everybody?
I think that's solid homework. I don't know does anyone disagree?
Sorry, you're breaking up. I can't hear you. I can't hear you very well.
I mean, I want to volunteers. I know we only have a certain amount of time. I'm trying to think about things that you could do in a few hours over the next 30 days.
Sorry, what was the question?
So
yes, I will do whatever you ask me to do, as long as you put it in an email and I remember to get to it.
We will. So that'll be my job. That'll be my job. I'll make sure that we kind of just kind of follow up with everybody outside of the meeting minutes and all that sort of stuff.
I'm like a week and a half behind my emails, so
yeah,
we'll try our best. Yeah, I'll make sure to kind of stay on top of you. I'll set a note just to kind of start sending, just to follow up with everybody on this and figure it out from there. But yeah, I'll start harassing. Just maybe now. I was reflecting on it last night, actually, and how compared to a year ago, things started to have shifted. We are starting to shift over, both in fundraising and projects and ideas and stuff like that. And part of that is now we have to start shifting how we handle these board meetings and handle these sorts of things and the stuff that we want to do. And so I'm going to up my persistence. I like to say harassment, but I'll up my persistence of just kind of following up with you guys specifically on the projects that you are working on, and making sure that at least we're having communication, finding out where struggles are, and doing what we need to do there. It's not as if the things that I've been working on I'm going to start dropping now, but it does. It feels like it, at least in my opinion, it feels like it's starting to shift a little bit as far as what we are doing as an organization. I feel that, when I started, we had good bones, and now I feel that those bones have started to kind of have some extra flesh put onto them, and now it's time to start doing the next level, right? And start to move on to that next level. So I will start upping my harassment of everybody, and obviously, John, you're more than welcome to as well. Anybody is welcome to stay on top of anybody else. But yeah, I will at least make a note for myself to start at least sending out a Monday, hey, where are you guys at? What do you need? Sort of thing.
Sounds great.
What am I supposed to be doing?
So for the next meeting, 2 asks. 1, think about tangible projects that we can discuss that can become like official projects that we can then go to fundraise with. And then we can write, like, even this grant that Curtis is writing is around projects, right? So we have 2 projects right now, I would say, that are definitely ongoing. One is the band pool project that's funded by UTRU, and one is the Transit Imagined that we've been working on as our kind of a big picture document. So I think we should come up with maybe 1 or 2 more that are tangible projects for us to be working on, that we can then start to put onto the website. And then the other piece of the puzzle is so just ideas for other projects that are very tangible. Very tangible. That's a way to think about it. Not policy stuff, not big picture stuff, not shifting the zeitgeist of the Utah legislature. Like, stuff volunteers can go and do, surveys at bus stops, talking to local organizations, chambers of commerce, their businesses, etc. And then 2 is think about contacts you may have as board members and organizations you may be involved in that could potentially do fundraising or that would potentially be donors to the organization, and bring some of those to the table.
I think I've potentially pissed off everybody that would donate to us. So.
Well, we'll see what we can do.
You can't come with neither. You have to come with one or the other. Otherwise, we'll just look at you. And
yeah, but I come with money.
Well, Chris, don't worry.
Let's get some other people to come with money.
We just want some other board members to be stepping up to the plate here.
Yeah. See, I still have my credit card. It's still full, or not full.
Right.
So reasonable asks for next month.
I think so. And
those are reasonable.
Yeah. And like I said, having done this sort of stuff in the past, the biggest thing is just making sure I stay on top of it so that you guys can stay on top of it, which is my job. So I will start, like I said, I will start doing that, just kind of doing a weekly touch base, see where you guys are at. I'll loop in maybe every other week the chapters as well, just touch base and take it from there. But like I said, I was reflecting on it last night, and I was kind of thinking, things are moving forward, and I'm kind of glad to see that others on the board kind of feel that same way. So that's time. I don't want to cut anyone short, but especially if we're going to be increasing communications in general. I don't know if anybody has anything that they want to add, but yeah, I'll open it up to. And John, I'm sorry if you do have anything else, but if there is anything else anybody wants to discuss before we call it a meeting.
No, just thanks, John. I knew you had it in it. To do this. So
thanks, Chris. Let's get to soon and chit chat transit and UTRU.
Yeah, I need to catch up on those emails and plug in a little bit more. My allergies have been kicking my ass this last week. So unfortunately, but it is what it is. But I'll get to it this week and we can touch base.
Sounds good.
And then before we go, Devin, are you interested in just kind of being as a CC as far as these particular meetings are concerned? I can certainly add you to those and do it that way.
Yeah, sorry, I thought this was like just a monthly member meeting, but no worry. I just got it from like the website.
That's how we hook you. That's how we hook our board members. Is we
okay. No, I'm happy to join though on a monthly basis for sure. Okay.
Devin needs to be a new board member. Just add him now. Volunteer.
Well, so Bree, that's your assignment then, is to convince him. I'm sure, Devin, I don't know you personally, but I'm sure you're susceptible to things like cookies or, coffee or something along those lines. I'm sure we can bribe you somehow.
Sure. Yeah.
All right, so that's
cheap.
That's your assignment.
All right.
Cool. All right. Anything else anybody wants to talk about before we call it a day? All right. Well, then we have one final motion that is to adjourn. It's non-debatable. All those who agree, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
All right. One opposed from Chris. That being said, motion carries. All right. Thank you, you guys. I'll be in touch via email, and then we will see you this time in a month.
Sounds good.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.